That song you love is on right now, not later, not on a playlist, not something you have to pay for. I mean live, right now. That's called radio. In Seattle, that's called Warm 106.9.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power. This is a show that's all about building a better life. Who doesn't want that? I know I want that. I know you want that. So why don't you join us for the next hour and find out one of the ways in which you can do that. And hopefully you can apply some of these things in your own life right away, right? Because that's the best part of this whole thing. And
look, you just gave me.
Yeah, I'm in a mood today. I think it's good. I'm always excited to be here, but I'm for whatever reason, things are moving today. And I got to introduce everybody in case you're brand new. I'm JDK Winnikin. Across from me is my friend, my business partner, my co-host, person who just makes me laugh every single time I talk to her, Ashley Kniebel. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
All right. Yes, I know. Off to a running start here. How are you?
I'm doing good.
That's good. Good. All right. So building a better life. So many different ways to go about this. And if you are new, welcome to the show. And if you'd like to catch up on any of our other episodes, and we have over 100 of them, you can get this as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel where you can watch videos of this and see the insanity yourself. And again, Staying Power Show as well. And you can email us at stayingpowershow@gmail.com. Check us out on our social media feeds. All of that information is in the show notes for every episode. We'd love to hear from you. And more is on the way. Did I cover everything, Ashley?
Yes. I'm still shocked that we have more than 100 episodes out.
I know.
Sometimes I'm like, how do we have so much to talk about?
We always do.
And then I remember you're there, so that makes sense.
Oh, wow. Taking a direct hit.
You have a lot of good thoughts. That's where that was going, I swear.
All right. Okay. So let's just go ahead and jump into this before it devolves any further. All right. So we've been... every single week, one of the fun things about this show is you never know till you get here what it's going to be. If you're a listener, we know what it's going to be when we get here. However, this is a little bit of a curveball one for us topic. So Ashley and I decided, for reasons we'll talk about in just a minute, that we wanted to do an episode on research.
JD is so excited.
Which maybe sounds exciting to some of you just when I say that word. Others of you might go, oh, that sounds like a brainy thing to have to do. That's Ashley. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not a researcher.
Right. However, Ashley, what's interesting about this topic is it came up because of you.
I know.
It came up because of you.
I know.
I'm the supposed
so
brainiac here that does all the research.
I think you're rubbing off on me.
Yes. So Ashley, why don't you give us some context as to why you thought and specifically, let's talk about what we want to talk about.
Okay.
What is research and what is not?
That's a great question.
Yes. What is actual research and what is not? And we mean it in the public sense of like paying attention to what's going on, figuring out what you think, making decisions on what it is that you believe in, or, whatever we're talking about in any arena. What is research and what is not? And this came from you in a particularly acute way. So go ahead.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you are. It did. I was having a conversation I was not expecting to have with a person I was not expecting to have it with. And it was, for lack of better term, infuriating. Only because a little bit of a framework around this conversation was around a very touchy subject. And I usually, when it comes to certain things, if I don't really understand the topic or I don't have a good baseline knowledge of it, or I haven't done my research, I usually don't interact with those because I'm like, if I don't have anything positive or helpful or beneficial to bring to the conversation, I'm not just going to throw words out there. It's just not what I do. And I got roped into this conversation and I knew a little bit about the topic. It was around some political situations that's been happening recently. And I knew a little bit because I started to kind of tune into it. And the person I'm having the conversation with, I would say, did not really know what was going on. Had more just relied on a bunch of different social media posts and reels and, what the algorithm has thrown their direction. And when I inquired about like, oh, well, where did you learn that? Or how, what was the citation of the research and the facts and where did it come from? they sent me more stuff that really had there was no depth to it. There was
reinforced by the
yes,
algorithm?
there was nothing to prove with those. Like they didn't have any factual evidence. There was nothing, no sources, no citations, nothing. And then I was like, okay, that still isn't answering my question. Where can I find, what's the article, whatnot you got this from? And I was just like snapped a response of, well, just go do your own research.
Oh.
And I was like,
oh.
Like I was trying to maintain a mature response, and in my head I'm like, why? Because you didn't.
Oh,
you're relying on. Sometimes my brain is funny, but I was like, but you didn't, and now you're yelling at me about this, and I'm like, maybe that was a defense mechanism because they had no answer for me, and that was just kind of the knee-jerk response of like, well, you go find it, and it was really unsatisfying to get pulled into a conversation with the person and then have them not even be able to back up their own stance. And then they were just mad at me for a period of time afterwards. And it was just odd. And not to say that has caused me to shy away from ever indulging in a conversation like this again, but it really brought this to me. And that's why I brought it to you, because he loves doing research. And I was like, you'll love this.
Well, you've already gotten a sense from some of my reactions here. Yeah. Probably the look on my face if you're watching on our stream.
And this can be applied to a lot of things, not just like in the political heat that we're dealing with right now, but I have seen this before, like on social media and platforms and whatnot, in the fitness industry, where people read something, they get one little notion of something, they're like, everyone should be doing this diet, or everyone should be taking this supplement or whatever, and it's like the
silver bullet thing, this one thing, do this one thing.
This one little life hack, and you'll drop 30 pounds in 30 days. And it's like, oh my. So this is not like such a recent thing, but this is just compounded to the point where it just, especially in now day and age where our attention spans are incredibly short. And I think that's partially why people are not going into doing a lot of research, because they don't want to take the time to dive into how long that would take. They want just a quick snippet of something. They want to just, quickly browse over like the New York Times or whatever and get like the little short synopsis for their day.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're experts on it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
There's several things at play here. First, understanding what research actually is and how much time it takes. Two, making the mistake between access to information and developing understanding. Having a ton of information does not mean you are processing it. It does not mean that you're, consolidating it. It does not mean that you're actually accurate with it the first time around. And there's some changes that have happened in expectations of what that looks like in light of how we have changed our definitions of how much time we have, quote unquote, during the day. Most people now say, I'm so busy for the news, I'm too busy for this, I'm too busy to read a book, blah, 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 blah. We've spent a lot of episodes debunking that very idea, right? We construct what we choose to construct, right? With that. What I laugh about when people say do your own research is because that has completely lost its meaning in the last 10 years from what it used to mean. Do your own research once meant taking intellectual responsibility for what came out of your mouth or out of your pen, right?
Back in the day.
Intellectual response, it meant that. And the idea was not to spout something off until you really understood that. Now, people have been spouting off half-baked theories and opinions about politics and all this other crap for as long as I've been alive and longer than that, right? So this is a human thing. People do have a tendency to gravitate towards what they already want to believe, right? And then search for information to support that. It's confirmation bias, right? We all have to, whatever we choose to believe in. If we believe a certain thing is true, we want to go through the exercise of reinforcing and being comfortable that we are correct in that. But doing your own research fundamentally, accurately, to my mind, starts from the fundamental premise of you might find that you're not correct from the get-go, or there's something that you need to alter, that kind of thing. It once meant intellectual responsibility. Now, most people, when they say that, do your own research, it means do a Google search or scroll around on social media and see what comes up, right? So Google searches, social media clips, My favorite is influencers of all different types just citing different studies and then not putting the studies out there.
Yeah.
Now, not every influencer does that. I follow some who actually do a really good job of saying this report just came from this. Here's a link to it. Right? But how many people really click on the links and go read that?
Right.
Well,
and
I do.
Also, you cannot rely on ChatGPT because it is very common that those citations don't actually exist. People can put it in there and all of a sudden they get all these things and they're like, wow, it looks legitimate because it has an author and a title and a date and a URL code or whatever. And it must be real. And I'm like, have you looked that up?
Yeah.
No.
No, it's not. It's because all ChatGPT can do is scrub through what is available on the internet. And the internet has no quality control.
Right.
It has none. Whatever. And that's the thing about it. It is an equal level playing field platform for anybody who wants to put information out there, and anybody can dress it up to look a certain way. Anybody can put up some stuff up there and cite certain studies or cite certain books. But here's the problem. Over time, if people aren't reading books, that's a part of this too. People aren't reading reading to discern or reading to understand. People aren't reading books, if they aren't reading studies, if they don't know exactly what research actually is and how they're supposed to approach it, all they are doing is compounding, putting stuff up there, reacting to it, and that compounds again. People put their own reactions out there. It's like if you went to a restaurant and a chef had every food imaginable, right? You would think, okay, this chef knows everything, can put together.
Yes.
But the problem is, the assumption there is all the food is healthy, good, taken care of, and ready to be consumed, right? And prepared a certain way to keep everybody healthy. What if you went there and 75% of that food was rotted, was garbage?
Right.
You don't want that chef putting together something from the 75% that's garbage, right? And so how do you know? Well, this is the thing. People always say that. Well, how do I know? I usually think when people say that, they don't want to go through being uncomfortable, having to actually do some frickin' work.
Well, and let's be real. I'm imagining probably everybody who is listening or watching has gone through school at some point in their life, which means at some given time, you were assigned a research paper.
Right.
And we all remember how we felt when that was the assignment handed to us because we're like, great, you might have enjoyed it. But most people were like, this is going to take time. I'm going to have to invest looking over multiple pieces of content and books or articles or, depending on what time of era you were in school, you're going to have to put in a lot of work to formulate a research paper, which is finding evidence and building your own thesis on it and putting those together and having supporting. Yes. And having support of it. And not to say that I'm against someone doing really, really deep research and having a different opinion from me. I totally welcome that. Actually, I find that attractive. I find that really intriguing. Yes. To have a conversation with somebody that has a totally different viewpoint than me, but that they actually know it through and through by actual fact and can go toe to toe in a conversation like that. I think that's great.
It is.
But like you said, the fact that most people don't, and they just scour some quick little reading. And I'm like, and to me, honestly, having good research and opinion is knowing both sides of it, not just yours.
Absolutely. And being willing to engage in it with an understanding that even if you assess a bunch of facts and bring them together, that doesn't mean all the same interpretations of the facts are going to be the same. They don't all reveal that. And I think that's sort of what one of the assumptions is when people say, do your own research. Well, as soon as I find the fact, that gives me the truth. It doesn't necessarily, right? Certain things maybe, but it doesn't necessarily. And that's the other piece of this that's been lost. Research, in order to be discussed and debated, there is a fundamental assumption that you're willing to do that for the sake of constructive building of opinion between you and whoever you're interacting with. These days, it's do your own research so you can figure out if you're on the right side or not.
Yeah.
And then beat somebody over the head with the rest of it. Now, the problem is there's just so much of that is so unsubstantiated because research is not the same as searching. It's not. It's not. The search is just the beginning part, right? Again, to use the food analogy, right? If you think research is just going to the grocery store and buying stuff and that counts as cooking? It doesn't. You've just stockpiled a bunch of crap in your house and you have to figure out what to do with it. Just because you know how to go grocery shopping doesn't mean you know how to cook.
I feel very called out right now.
No.
'Cause that's what I do.
But you don't pretend.
Right.
That's the
I'm
thing.
very open that I don't know what I'm doing in the
You don't
kitchen.
pretend. Right, exactly. Research involves, this is the thing. Research involves time. It involves methodology. There's context to everything you're doing. Really good research stands up to scrutiny from other people that are experts, and that's called peer reviewing. Replication, when a scientific experiment is done, when somebody says, I did this, look, and here's the methodology, it has to be replicated by other people, right? Who can go follow your steps and say, yep, that's indeed what happens. Or, well, something else here has been forgotten, right? And it also involves, and this is something that is sorely lacking in our, social media, intellectual snack culture that we live in, right? Fast food culture. Some freaking intellectual humility, for God's sakes, right? The idea that you may not actually have the answer or the complete answer, right, is something that is sorely lacking because algorithms are the antithesis of all of this, right? They reward speed, they reward with a sense of certainty, right? And they reward by generating outrage. Those things are all antithetical to quality research. If you want to do research and you say, do your own research, guess what? You have to know how to keep your head.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know how to keep your cool. You have to know how to be introspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to know how to consider things, right? Nuance, provisional conclusions, like, got to test this out. Those don't spread well online. You don't build those. You don't build followers that way unless, I think, you're open about it, which is why we build followers, right?
This is true.
Because we're not doing this kind of stuff. It's slow, it's uncomfortable, and oftentimes research is inconclusive because you can continue to do that over and over and over again. And that's the whole freaking point.
I think I woke the professor
Woke
topic.
the beast. Woke the beast. Is it the professor or is it honestly responsible citizenship?
It's both.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I do get riled up by this idea of what does it take to be an effective quality citizen these days. And this is one of them, right? Okay. Anyway, okay.
What a great start.
All
Wow.
right. Good start. We're off and running. Okay. I'm going to need the break to calm down a little bit. Either that or juice myself up with more coffee. But nevertheless, let's go and take our first break here on Staying Power. When we come back, we'll dig in a little bit more into this subject of what does it mean to do your own research. We also, when we come back, will do our weekly segment, which this week is the 2 minutes of triumph. So we will see you back here in just a minute.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Ready to shake things up? Try Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hi.
We are talking about what is quality research. When somebody says, do your research. And if you paid attention to the first segment, you saw that it gets our dander up.
Dander?
Our dander. I know, 1950s. All right, anyway. Before we get back into that, let's do our weekly segment where Ashley and I each take a couple of minutes to talk about something that happened in our week that was either a triumph or a terror. This week it's a triumph. And talk about how we responded to it, what we learned from it, all in the name of showing exactly what we talk about on this show. Vulnerability, growth, resilience, all that good stuff. Keys to building a better life. All right, so here we go. 2 minutes of triumph. All right. Love that. I love waiting now for
Oh my gosh.
for what it's going to be.
Right? I know. It's
It's
part of the excitement for us.
exactly. Ashley, go ahead.
Okay, well, if you guys have been following on our show here, you've heard a lot about my little furry friends that I have. And thankfully, I had spoke recently about one of my sugar gliders, so I guess my only sugar glider now, Romeo. He had an issue and we had to amputate part of his tail. And he is all good. We took him to the vet, clean bill of health. Everything looks great. And they said he is fine and he's feeling back to normal and seemingly did well with surgery and all the things.
That's good. So can he do okay without like all his tail? Was it just part of it or was it all of it?
It was probably like half.
Okay.
So he's now smaller than he once was.
And he's already tiny.
He's already small. Yeah, he is just teeny. But he's doing good. He took down all the meds like a champ. I'm so proud for this
that's good.
little squirt.
That's good.
And that makes me feel good.
That's good.
And I don't have to drive all the way north to the exotic vet anymore. Because to take them to a vet, you have to take them to a specialized vet.
That's good.
Can't take them anywhere. So
that's good.
He's all good.
If you haven't listened to the show for a while, about a year or so ago, Ashley unfortunately lost her other sugar glider, Juliet, who was just too sick to recover. So that's good. I'm glad things worked out better for Romeo. That's good. That's exciting. Okay, my triumph was I actually got invited recently to speak about the podcast environment, right? And how podcasts work well, which ones don't, what this looks like for people who are looking to start one either because they have like a personal side they want to talk about or they want to do it for a business or that type of thing. I got a chance to speak to a group of really prominent business people at the Rainier Club here in Seattle. And if you don't know what the Rainier Club is, it's one of the longest standing clubs in the city, goes back to the 19th century. And it has that look, right? Mm-hmm. It has that look. And it's got very prestigious membership from, all across the business spectrum of the Puget Sound. And so having a chance to speak there to a group of professionals who are all interested in building podcasts for their company or that type of thing was really fun. We did that as part of the company that Ashley and I run together, Speaking Current, that helps people do this. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you about how you can effectively build a show like what we're doing. It went really well. And I think I knew it was going pretty well when the questions kept coming, Ashley, afterwards, right? There was, sometimes I think you can measure a presentation by how many questions you get at the end. It was a lot. So it just felt good. It kind of felt like a nice step for the company. And it felt good to be in teacher mode again. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, it was kind of a
nice.
big of a lecture. Yeah. So yeah, it was good. It's for me, those steps moving forward in something always feel good, right? When you're building something, you know this too in business, when you hit a new mark, right? Or you get a new opportunity and it goes well, it feels like you've really gotten some traction, right? Even if it hasn't turned into something specific yet, just the very act of doing it is validation. It was one of those things.
Nice.
Okay. All right. So there we go.
All right.
Next week will be 2 minutes of terror, probably. But
yes, I think it will be.
Okay. All right, Ashley, let's get back to this discussion about research now that I've calmed myself down a little bit.
Are you sure?
No, I'm
not.
So I can easily get riled up again. Let's talk a little bit about this, and particularly from position of what does psychology and neuroscience tell us? One of the things on this show that we come back to time and time and time again is all the things that we have hardwired into us that can actually help us do all these things to build a better life, which is essentially building resilience, being able to snap back from stressful situations, not turn them into something bigger, not be run down by them, not develop ways of coping with them that are not healthy. So psychology and neuroscience is where we go quite a bit in this. I think the biggest issue here is this thing that we all have hardwired into us that we could call, for lack of a better term, belief protection. We all want to protect our beliefs.
Sure.
Right? And sometimes we don't even realize that how much we want to protect them until we feel they're under threat. Right? And there's a lot of elements of this. So I thought we would just kind of bounce back and forth. Right?
Sure.
And the first one is what you were talking about.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias.
Yes.
Right.
What I was saying pretty much earlier is just how you find things to support and confirm the belief that you already have.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say that's a horrible thing because I think that's what we do on the day-to-day. You have a gut feel, so you start researching something, and then you're like, oh, okay, that aligns with what I was thinking. That feels better. I was right. Okay, that's good.
Right.
But I think it depends on what the topic is.
Yeah.
When it is something that isn't just within your own little bubble, but you're
Right.
starting to affect, or if you're going to speak outwardly and spread word about something, that is when you want to actually
Yeah.
find things that are not just confirming what you feel is right.
Right.
And then the other half of that is when you find things that don't confirm, it feels threatening.
Right.
And it causes a stir in you and it's uncomfortable. And you're like, well, that must not be right because it's making me feel wrong,
Right. Oh, well put.
which is not the case.
Right.
And sometimes it's good to feel that because then if you, like we always say, in discomfort, sit with it for a moment and kind of embrace it and just be curious about it of where is this coming from? Why does this feel uncomfortable for me? Because now it's challenged my confirming bias.
Yep.
Is it a bad thing? Is it just different?
Right.
Does it open up an area that I've never explored before, which is kind of weird and uncomfortable? I didn't even know that place existed or,
Right.
whatnot. I would encourage people to look into that instead of just the knee-jerk response of shying away or shutting it down because it doesn't align with what you currently know right now.
Right, because there could very well be a different way to frame it. We tend to frame things, this is another thing that falls into place in our neuropsychology, to say there's one side or another, right? It's sort of how we divide out, right? On one level, that's normal. You define yourself by something you believe in group A, and therefore whatever doesn't believe that, right, is group B.
Yes.
Right? So, an easy one is somebody who identifies around a specific religion, and then the opposite side of that B is somebody who's either of a different one or doesn't even believe in a religious idea in the first place. And the idea is that they are irrevocably opposite, that you cannot necessarily overlap any of them. You can't find any sort of commonality, or at worst, the other side is a threat, right, to something, rather than really exploring it as where might there actually be common threads here, connecting on things. And that can be really important, for example, in politics, right, where you have, in these days, it's so difficult, right, because everybody's just drawn these battle lines, right? And some of them make sense, frankly, from my vantage point. Other ones don't. But what ends up happening is if you are part of a side, quote unquote, that believes A, B, and C or supports A, B, and C, and the other side clearly does not support A, B, and C, it kind of stops there. From D through Z, are there other areas that cooperate, particularly between policymakers, right? And that's what leads to gridlock, right, in government. And unfortunately, that's happening a lot these days. What I'm getting at is what you're saying is the difficulty is when we feel discomfort looking at these things, we can interpret it really quickly as a threat to our sense of identity, right? The brain responds, actually, interestingly enough, everybody, the brain responds to those intellectual challenges with those emotional responses as if we're facing a physical threat, right? The chemical response is the same, right? So if you are confronted with something that challenges outright your strong-held belief in things, right? And I'm going to pick a very specific incident, right, and talk about this. One of the recent shootings in Minneapolis that was on video, right, clearly on video, from multiple angles, lots of different things going on, directly challenged the narratives for a lot of people that the person who was shot was causing trouble or meant ill intent. Right? The discomfort from that side of that issue has been so palpable because that challenges the idea. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that that's the end of the conversation about everything else that's going on in the world, everything else that's going on in the country with that. But that specific incident challenged so many people who were really supportive of what was happening there. And as it should. My response to that is, what are you afraid of? Right? But that's that response, a physical response to this. This is a threat to my belief about this, right? So what happens when we're threatened? We activate all of our patterns, right? So it sounds like what you were facing, Ashley, in your conversation. Some dismissal, some withdrawal from the conversation or withdrawal from life, aggression, passive aggressive, maybe, right? Even mockery. This can happen quite a bit. All of those things. And those are all things we see in spades on social media. All of them, right? And it feeds the beast. Okay. So that's the thing. So, Ashley, what do you think is with all that laid out, what are the antidotes to this? Where would you start? If all that's true, right? How did you face it? Because you said at the top of the show, this is not someplace you normally go.
Right.
But you did. So what did you do? Did you run counter to all these things? It sounds like you challenged yourself a bit here.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because it's not a space that I normally go to. I'm not super involved in politics and whatnot because I do not spend a lot of time in the muck of all of it on all sides and whatnot. So I usually don't engage in conversations like that. But for whatever reason, this particular instance just piqued my interest. And so I started looking into it. And the more I did, and then this conversation came up. And some of the stuff that you said is what happened in the conversation. Like when I started to prod and be like, well, where did you find that? And I was coming at it with genuine curiosity.
Like, where did you find this out?
Yes, because I'm like, I could be wrong. My own like gut feel feels right. So I'm like, well, obviously maybe I'm right. But I'm like, but what if I am wrong? I want to see what else is out there. And this person had such a strong stance oppositional to me that I'm like, they must know something I don't. So I asked, where did you get that? Where did you learn that? Where's the link? Or, all these questions. And I was met with a very defensive response. And it at first was a little bit aggressive. And then it was very dismissal. Like I wasn't mocked or anything to that nature. But once it became evident that they were not able to give me what I was asking for, then it was dismissed. Again, like I said, do your research and whatnot. Right. And I was very frustrated by that. Obviously, I went and did some research. I did because that person wasn't able to direct me. So I'm like, well, fine, I'll figure it out myself. And I'm glad, actually, as much as that conversation happened, that was frustrating. I'm glad it happened because then it did push me to do my own research instead of going off of the direction that they were going to point me in.
Yeah.
And for me, I try to approach a lot of this stuff with curiosity, like we talk about a lot, and just lead with that first. Because if you lead with your other emotions that are fired up in the moment, you're going to miss a lot of things. Yeah. I didn't go and look right then and there because I was kind of fired up and I was really frustrated. And I waited until like the next day or like a couple days later. And then I started looking into other things to see. And I think one of the things that kind of comes to a conclusion on this for me is that when I looked at the other person and just took a step back and was like, why are they even acting that way in this conversation? Like, this is somebody I'm very close to. And this was a first for both of us to engage in a conversation like this. Usually I don't even bother calling them out on stuff, but this time I did. And I think it just felt like they had so much identity rooted in their perspective that me questioning it went so much deeper than just the topic itself.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they were taking it like a personal insult.
Yep.
And then I think when I was starting to question like where it all came from and like what are they basing it on, now I'm insulting their intelligence.
Yep.
And I'm insulting their thought process.
The identity. And you're attacking their identity.
Yes, I'm really, and not trying. Like I said, it was a very, very curious question of like, I didn't know that. Where did you find that? I would like to read more. Where did you see that? I want to look further. And not in a chiding way, but in an honest way.
Yeah.
And it's surprising that response out of it, that it was so uncomfortable for them. And the fact that I saw the uncomfortableness told me all I needed to know.
Absolutely.
Is that you don't really know.
Absolutely. It reminds me of what a number of different thinkers and researchers who do this for a living and actually epitomize the very thing we're talking about talk about. One of them is a guy named Daniel Kahneman, who he broke people's reactions into things he calls System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the fast, emotional, reactive response we have to things. That's what we're talking about. System 1 is easily accessible. It's immediately gratifying because sometimes rage and reaction feels good, right? It feels like you're protecting. It's the fight or flight system kicked in, right? That's system 1. But system 2 is slow, effortful, and analytical. System 2 is also hardwired into ourselves. We have the ability to do this, but it requires us to slow down, to calm our nervous system, to really read and investigate from a position of curiosity, right? So Daniel Kahneman, Kahneman, he did a lot of this. One of my favorites is a guy named Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. He's written several New York Times bestsellers. He's an excellent psychology researcher. One of his most recent books is called The Anxious Generation, and he really tackled why the generation that grew up with smartphones seemingly is having a completely different experience of life internally and externally than everybody else. It's sobering. It's a sobering book. But he doesn't claim that this is the end-all be-all, right? He puts all that out there for the conversation. He talks about in almost all of his work that our personal beliefs are tied to our identity and to our sense of moral belonging, that we are a part of a moral code, we are part of a moral system, that we're part of a moral community, that we have to have them. And to have those things challenged is to threaten that place. And then the last is that I'd mention right now is Leon Festinger, who talks about cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is trying to hold two competing ideas and competing sets of evidences together without recognizing that it's a problem, right? Conflicting evidence feels painful because cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. And anytime we recognize that we are in a position of cognitive dissonance, it is uncomfortable because we can tell ourselves we're wrong, we're stupid, we're dumb, that type of thing. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about why that isn't the case, but that cognitive dissonance is a flag. If you recognize that there's something there, it means that there's probably something important to investigate, not just intellectually, but for your own internal landscape of stability and building resilience. So when we come back from our break here on Staying Power, we'll dig into those practical things.
When I smoke weed, I get lost in the music. I like to isolate each instrument. The rhythmic bass, the harmonies on the piano, the sticky melody.
Hey, careful, babe. There's someone crossing the street.
Sorry, I didn't see him there.
If you feel different, you drive different. Don't drive high. It's dangerous and illegal everywhere. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
There's a reason they invented the internet. It's called 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And we are having a really vibrant conversation here about research. Ashley, thank you so much for bringing this in.
Oh, you're welcome.
And not just because it's one of the things that gets me going.
I had a feeling you would enjoy it, but I didn't think I would get to see this fired.
Fired up.
Here we are.
Yeah, it does fire me up quite a bit because I do think it's so important, and it's a skill set that more and more people are realizing, or hopefully that they need to develop. All right, so in this last segment, Ashley, we always try and do the last part of our show with some practical tips, right? There are things that hopefully you can apply right away. They don't take a lot of time to get started, or at least to experiment with and see how you feel. Almost all of them, when you start doing them, engender a little bit of discomfort. But really, to build a better life, it's learning how to live more comfortably with discomfort. So what counts as real research? Okay, now, Ashley, you asked me during the break, where did you develop all these ideas? Like, how did you develop all this? Well, one of the things you talk about, what you're really glad happened, that conversation you had. Really glad happened. One of the things I'm most happy about in my life is that I went to graduate school for years, got a PhD in history, and history is one of the disciplines that is absolutely fundamentally built on quality research, and you're assessed on that, right? You have to learn not just the facts of something. It's not just learning the stories of history or learning all those things. It's learning about where we get that knowledge from. And that's source material, right? Written documents, archaeological evidence, news footage, all of that. So there's primary source material, right, from the time periods in which you're studying. There's secondary material, the books that have been written ever since, right? So what have historians said about the fall of ancient Rome since the fall of ancient Rome? That's called historiography. You have to learn the geography of the historical discussions. You have to learn that. And then you kind of blend those together. And when you read the historiography, you have to go, okay, well, this person was writing in the 1930s. What are the influences on them in the 1930s? What was the conversation about? What were they leaving out? What did they not know yet? Because new information could be found about something. Right. And in the end, I always learned that history, by the construction of it, the teaching of it, the research of it, is fundamentally humbling. And you have to be aware of that. For as strident as a historian can be in their conclusions, they have to be open to the idea that new evidence coming out might require them to change their conclusion. Mm-hmm. And so what that encouraged in me was the ability to be careful, meticulous, open, and take my time. There's a reason why professionally trained historians takes a while for them to write books. It's not just because they're busy with life, right? It's part of that. But because this takes time. And if you're reading documents, for example, that are in multiple languages, you have to translate them, right? Mm-hmm. You have to assess the quality of those documents. You can't just assume that because there's a document that the person who wrote it,
scroll,
right,
so it must be.
Right, or that somebody was being fully truthful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That the person writing it didn't have their own bias. It's layer after layer after layer after layer. And so you have that, and then you have to have other people peer review it. When I was in graduate school, my number one, the biggest project, of course, is the dissertation. You essentially have to write a book, and it has to be really well researched, has to be supported by evidence, and it has to be hammered out between you and your academic advisor over the years that you write it. And then you got to defend the thing in front of a bunch of experts, other professors who know this subject matter better than you do. And it's a process of iron, sharpening iron, sharpening iron, sharpening iron. And my dissertation was way too long, 200 pages too long, right? Ashley's laughing. It was over-argued, right? I was so wanting to make sure I'd made my point. I think I made my same point 50 times when 10 would have sufficed, right? One of those things. But that wasn't the point. The point was to show you could do that. Mm-hmm. And then to know where are the limits? What do you not know? What are you leaving out? And being honest with that. So if you pick up a history book, in the foreword, a historian is going to say, this is what this book is about. This is what it says. This is what I'm not discussing because it was too beyond the scope of what I needed to look at.
Interesting.
So that's the thing. There's an assumption that it is a conversation continuing. That does not mean that the facts themselves are not known. It's the conversation about what those facts mean and where you get them and what was decided, what was not, what's correlation, what's causation. It takes time. And learning history as a well-researched conversation helped me more than anything else not just take everything as a personal attack if they disagreed with my conclusions.
Yeah.
To me, that is my fundamental principle there. So it involves things. You have to be transparent in your methods. Mm-hmm. You have to have peer-reviewed sources, things that experts themselves know and say are clear limitations, a willingness to be wrong, right? And then there has to be engagement with opposing evidence. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in the social media-driven news environment we live in, that last part, engagement with opposing evidence, is usually taking something and using it as a cudgel to beat someone over the head with.
Sure.
Right.
So since you have so much experience with research and all of that and finding support, if someone were to go out there and want to learn more about a topic and they're like, I want to learn both sides of things, I don't know where to start. What is, obviously we've said social media is probably not your best place to find things. Where would you suggest that people go, and how many quote unquote reputable sources should they have to point in to support like their side? Like if they find 3 to 5, does that mean like, okay, this is probably correct if those are 3 to 5 reputable sources? Or is it 1 or 2 because it's new evidence? Like, what? How does one start?
I think I would shift one thing about that. Is a certain amount of sources mean you're right? No, it does not.
Correct.
A good amount of sources can give you hopefully the beginnings of a coherent, credible argument. Mm-hmm. that then has to be engaged with other arguments and other evidence. This is the idea. Everybody seems to think they have to do this research and then be like, I have the answer. No, all you can put together is a credible argument about a position that you're taking. And then it has to uphold under scrutiny. And if it doesn't hold up under scrutiny, that's not somebody else's problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's your problem, right? To continue to look at. Now, I will say a couple things. One, picking up one book and reading it does not make you an expert at all, because not all books are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of, political commentators and frankly, political hacks who write history books, quote unquote, that end up selling large numbers, but they aren't very good. And all they do is cite writers who already support their own position politically, and they don't necessarily dig into primary evidence or anything like that. My first thing I do when I look at a book in history or anything else is I go to the footnotes. What sources are they using? Where are they getting this from? Who are they quoting? It means I got to know who the writers are.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to spend some time on that.
Mm-hmm.
Are they using primary evidence? How do I know they translated it well? Even if you don't know the answers to this question, it has you reading the book in a more measured fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Not every book that's written on every subject is the same. The three most written about people in the world, in history right now: Jesus of Nazareth, Abraham Lincoln, Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean that all the books about them say the exact same thing.
Right. Okay, so question, because you came from an era where books were your primary source of research.
Well,
I come from an era where the internet is everything. Now, there's like newspapers and
book,
journals, articles. I read a lot of books.
No, I know you do.
But my question is, people would say books are dead because they happened a long time ago. Whereas like modern day internet is more alive because things are being written in present day.
Right.
And they have probably gone through some of the more modern evidence and things that have happened that once a book is written, unless you write more after them in sequence, then it can only encompass the knowledge you knew at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So for people in the more modern era where a book in a library may not be their first go-to, is it wise to read like online journals and newspapers, or like
Yes.
what is a good source to go to in your opinion?
In my opinion, the news, I don't remember who said this, but one person said that newspapers and journalism is a good first draft of history, but you can't necessarily trust the quality of the draft.
Sure.
It's just the beginning of something. I would say social media stuff is the same thing, right? And social media things are subject to the same things you said. They're very limited in scope, right? And they don't even last as long. They might last a week, right? So you can't trust that either under the same argument. Yes, reading newspapers matters. Unfortunately, there's been such an attack across the board on mainstream media for so long, right? Stripping it down, which scrutiny for media is fine. But to strip everything down and eliminate the ability for anyone to have any sort of authoritative voice or credible voice is a problem. Journalists are taught to do things a certain way. There is a whole technique to that of developing sources, verifying sources, that type of thing. The idea that every single reporter or investigator, well, they have biases, so therefore you can't trust them. Everybody does. But journalists are trained more so than your average social media fire breather on how to recognize their own biases and recognize their own limitations and how to move beyond that. And they have high standards for verification before they publish something. And if they don't, there are consequences because other people test them and go, that's not true, we don't have that evidence, and then they have to retract something. That's never good. Reading newspapers is not bad, and recognizing that certain newspapers are owned by certain companies or that all matters, right? But what I do every single day is I have 6 newspapers that I read from every single day. Every single day. 2 are in the United States. 1 is in Great Britain, 1 is in India, and another is in Japan. And I read them every day. And I try and find what's overlapping in all of them. That's what I look for. Because there's a standard there, right? And starting there is good. Books, however, the other thing I would say is get more comfortable with reading books. And not because you have to necessarily read 10 and you don't have time to read 10 or you don't have the interest in reading 10. But if you learn how to read a book, a nonfiction book like that, research-based effectively, you can at least get a measured sense of what's being said. It's an investigative thing. Treating this as an ongoing conversation is an important thing. Everybody else has to, every individual though has to decide when they've run into the point of, yep, this is what I believe, this is what I think is true.
Mm-hmm.
This is what matters. But usually those are more around principles than around specific things that have happened or are happening.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. What else? That was your question.
Well,
right?
that was just a question because, like you said, we try and give takeaways to our viewers and listeners. And for somebody that if they are like, okay, I took the notes, I listened to your podcast, and I understand I really need to know my stuff before I engage in things. And usually that's the question of the overwhelm is where do you start?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure we addressed
well,
that.
There's a few things too, like some red flags. Anytime you hear someone say, this is the stuff they don't want you to know. Okay, hold on. Right? How do you know that?
Yeah.
Right? That's not a bad question to ask, even if it's to somebody that you genuinely trust, right? Or you genuinely like or genuinely follow. Anybody treating single studies as proof of something, right? I automatically just go, no, I'm not going to do that. They might be right, but I'm not going to assume that. People making absolute certain statements from certain data, right? I'm always, anything that's not very measured, I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's not get lost in your, the hyperventilating of your certainty. And then any sources that only cite each other.
That you got to read the footnotes.
Yeah, and that takes investigation. It does take investigation. And I want people to recognize that this doesn't have to feel as threatening. If the idea is I only have so much time, that's a clear sign that fight or flight response in you is triggered and that you're feeling uncomfortable because you feel like you have to get answers so quickly that you can feel better about your own position. We are suggesting a longer term engagement with discomfort and investigation, and recognizing that if you do that from a place of curiosity and openness, you actually can regulate that discomfort and that stress a bit more. And actually you'll probably be able to better handle those types of conversations, right? Real inquiry takes time. And it's hard because sometimes suspending immediate judgment can be tough, right? I use that example, what happened in Minneapolis. It's really hard. Really hard when you see video evidence that seemingly is really, really clear. And everybody has to decide when they've seen enough to believe that.
Sure.
Right? Everybody has to decide that.
Sure.
And then, of course, I ask the bigger question. Why are we so reluctant to have the experience of our beliefs evolving? Why are we so uncomfortable with that?
It's a really good question.
Yeah. I don't know if there's an answer, right? And I'm not sure we need an answer is what I would suggest. It doesn't mean every single thing has to be open because I can hear people going, that means you're just kind of floating around. You don't necessarily believe in any one thing. No.
Sure.
No. It just means openness to going, okay, I can change my mind on that, right? I mean, you showed it, right? Sitting down and spending some research, you were willing to see this. Right?
Well, because that's what I was trying to do because this is somebody, like I said, I care about, and I just wanted to make sure it wasn't you're wrong. It was, hey, this is what I found. What have you found? Come at it with some curiosity, come at it with some openness and some acceptance so they feel comfortable understanding that maybe they are wrong or that they need to go back and do a little bit more digging around.
And you found a position where you felt comfortable in what you had decided was right or wrong in that.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's not bad. It's what we do with it.
This was a great topic.
Really was. We could keep going and maybe we'll build off this in the future. But for now, it is time for us to sign off here for this episode of Staying Power. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope it was really useful for you. Remember, once again, you can reach out to us at stayingpowershow@gmail.com or our media feeds. You can find all of those in our show notes, wherever you get your podcasts, at our YouTube channel and at our radio home, 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. We'd love to hear from you. We will be back next week with another way to build a better life. And we look forward to seeing you then. I am JDK Winnikin.
I'm Ashley.
And we will see you next time.